she is. Hi, Amy.
And Susan, we are live.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I know it's never easy. We're a little over a month since you lost your homes in the glass fire. And thank you for joining us for the conversation tonight. This is a really important conversation. And if you know of folks who have not been notified of this meeting, please have them or you send their email addresses so that they could be included on our contact list. But always know that our recorded Zoom messages, along with our panelists' comments, are cataloged on our Facebook, on my Facebook post or my Facebook page. So you can always refer back to them. It's a lot of information that we're going to throw at you tonight. Very important information as you try to slog your way through understanding your insurance policy and talking with your insurance agents. These are folks on our panel discussion tonight who will really be instrumental in helping you navigate through this journey. So thank you so much. And remember to please send your contact information to Ariel Kubu-Jones. She'll post it in the chat a couple of times. In case you are not notified, you will want to be on our list. I'm sad that you are on our list. We are all in this together, and I know most of all how difficult this journey is. Now I really want to do a little reminder for it is time to submit your right of entry form for the public debris removal program. We're well on our way or completed with the household hazardous waste pickups, and we're ready to start in a week or two or a couple of weeks the debris cleanup, but we need your right of entry form if you're going to participate in the public option. The deadline isn't until mid-December. The program is set to begin December 1st. Right now, there are not that many ROEs that have been turned in for our 2020 fires, Walbridge, Myers, and Glass. If Sonoma County doesn't get enough ROEs, that's right of entry forms, the crews that are set to start here will go to another county, and it means that your debris cleanup will be pushed further on back into the season. So please reach out to your neighbors and make sure that Sonoma County can begin our debris cleanup program as soon as possible. You can reach out to our office for more information or refer to the glass fire update emails that Ariel sends out, or visit socoemergency.org/2020-ROE. So a bit of housekeeping about our panel discussion tonight. We'll have our panelists present information. The Q&A and the chat will be turned off for this meeting, and we ask folks to hold all of your questions until after the presentations. Once it's time for the questions, please use the raise hand function on the Zoom. Often it's in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and Ariel will recognize you and promote you to speak, and then you can ask your question. So if you've called in, you can hit *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. We'll remind you about that a little bit later. Again, this evening's meeting is recorded and will be made available if you have friends or neighbors that could not attend. We are also live on my Facebook page. We'll send the recording out in an update in the near future. And if we run out of time for questions, please reach out directly to us at our office, and we will ensure that you get the answers to your questions. It's my pleasure to introduce our presenters tonight. And again, it's all about insurance and property assessments. We have folks from the State Department of Insurance, the Assessor's Office, our recovery, Office of Recovery and Resiliency, and United Policyholders, a wonderful nonprofit that has been helping wildfire survivors for decades and certainly was instrumental in my understanding about insurance 3 years ago. First, I want to introduce Tony Cignarale from the California State Department of Insurance. Tony, thank you so much for taking the time once again to be with us virtually tonight. And we'll turn it over to you, Tony, for your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Gorin, for holding this meeting tonight. We're a few months removed from the fires, so it's difficult to know where people are. People are probably at different stages in the claims process, but I'll provide a little bit of information and then wait for the Q&A to answer any more specific questions. But in general, go to our website. I highly recommend it. We have a wildfire resource page. You'll get some tips there, some information. You'll see a copy of all of our notices that we've issued that pertain specifically to these 2020 fires and some of the protections that Commissioner Lara has either put in place or requested that insurance companies comply with. Some of those are, for example, immediately after, in August, after these fires started, Commissioner Lara issued a notice requesting insurance companies provide advance payment of 20, if you have a total loss, of 25% of your contents personal property coverage and 4 months of additional living expense coverage. So make sure that you've already received that advance payment in the event you had a total loss. Also, in October of this year, Commissioner Lara issued a subsequent notice requesting that insurance companies pay almost all of your contents coverage limits without you having to go through the onerous process of a home inventory, which could be multiple pages. Commissioner Lara didn't believe that was fair, and we've seen in past fires where it's really not fair for people to do. So we did make that request. We recently got responses back from the insurance industry. We've posted those responses on our website as to which companies agreed to the minimum amount at least, which is 75% of your contents limit or 30% of your dwelling limit for content. It's a little complicated, but a significantly greater amount than the 25% than you may have been advanced. So please go to the website. You can check for your particular company to see if they agree to it, and then contact them to see what specific percentage they're offering on those claims. If you run into a roadblock or a delay and the adjuster's not aware of the agreement that their insurance company made with us, contact us so that we can circle back with the company to make sure that word gets out to all their adjusters. The next issue involves just making sure that everybody's aware of some of the major laws that are in effect for these more recent wildfires. One is that you can combine your coverages, your structure coverage and your other structure coverage on your homeowner's policy if you're underinsured for your structure coverage. So that's something to keep in mind. And in addition to that, the timeframes for getting full replacement costs, as well as your additional living expense payments, it has been extended over the years by law. And the current law requires 36 months for you to be able to still collect your replacement costs, plus extensions for good cause, as well as for additional living expenses, 24 months, plus an additional 12 months, making it 36 months for showing of good cause. So what that means is it's going to be really important over these next several months for you to document situations where there's been a delay in the claims process, a delay in the permitting process, a delay in the rebuilding process, so that as you get towards that 36-month period, you have documentation to show to your insurance company that you have good cause circumstances beyond your control that cause it to go beyond the 36 months, so that you don't void any of the coverages and benefits that you paid a premium for. So that's something to keep in mind. And lastly, just also keep in mind, if you decide not to rebuild and you decide to buy a home in another location, you are eligible to receive your full replacement costs, which includes the building code upgrade and extended replacement costs The key there is understanding how much it's going to fully cost to rebuild what you lost on that property, even though you're not going to rebuild. That will be the determining amount that you're eligible for if you spend that amount in purchasing a home in another location. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Supervisor Gorin. I'll leave my number. Also, contact us at 800-927-4357 or visit us online at insurance.ca.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And the combination of the Insurance Commissioner's Office and United Policyholders are truly a dynamic duo. They really want to help all of us through the challenges that we have with understanding our coverage and seeking out additional coverage. Our next presenter is our amazing Deva Marie, Proto, or Assessor, Registrar, Clerk, I think a recorder. Yes, I always forget that one. Deva, it's such a pleasure. And I know we would all want to congratulate you and your amazing team on the successful election that we had, almost trouble-free. Compared with the other states, it is trouble-free, and we're so grateful to have you. But the function that you're going to be talking about tonight is the assessment process. Thank you, Deva Marie.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I'll be talking about the assessment process, not the tax bills, but the assessment process. We do have on our website calamity claim forms. They need to be completed within 1 year of the disaster. We need one form for each assessor parcel number. So if you own multiple APNs, we will need one for each. But you don't need to update it if you get new information. So give us the APN, as much information as you have, get that filed with our office, and then we'll take it from there. We are currently working as a priority all the LNU complex fires and the glass fire claims, as well as late filed Kincaid claims. So we're working on all of those right now. And basically what we'll be doing is if your property was, if your house was destroyed, we'll be taking the structure value of the destroyed buildings off of the assessment roll. We don't remove value for burned landscaping or trees, because they are not assessed on the tax roll. There is an exception for trees and vines that are currently being assessed, which is plantings of fruit and nut trees that are vineyards and systematic plantings. If you do choose to rebuild, you will be able to retain your base year value if you're rebuilding a like structure. You do have to rebuild in a timely manner. And the current assessment year is based on values as of January 1st, which is the lien date. So if you start rebuilding your house and you have some of it rebuilt on January 1st, you will have a portion of the old base year value restored. And that'll happen every January 1st until the rebuild is complete. If you rebuild, if you complete the rebuild between January and May, you will receive 2 supplemental bills for the rebuild. If it's built between June and December, you'll get 1 supplemental tax bill. So that's confusing to a lot of people, but it is just truing up the amounts. If you do choose to add an ADU or a JDU, it will be assessable if you didn't have it before. Our office cannot give value estimates. It's really just as of the date of completion, and we don't know what the values of properties are going to be in the future. There was a new law passed this year, which is great, and it allows people to build up to 120% of the old structure value. It used to be 100%, so now it's a little bit more. And if you do rebuild more than that, you will keep your base year value, and then you'll have the new portion of the house assessed at market value, and it will be combined for a new total. Basically, you're not being penalized for the house being burned. If you are adding that extra bathroom or something that you want, it would be the same as if you had your old house and you were choosing to add on a bathroom at that point in terms of the taxes. Now, if you choose to transfer your value, you have a couple of options. Proposition 50 allows you to transfer that base year value to a replacement property in Sonoma County. It can be up to 120% of the value of the property the day before the fire. That property has to be acquired or built within 5 years. And if you purchase something that's larger than 120%, you'll keep the base year value for the 120%, and then you'll get newly assessed on the rest. That is a one-time transfer, and there is no transferring back to the original property. And you can wait if you're not sure. We can do a tax bill correction up to 4 years if you do submit the paperwork late. We did pass in California Proposition 19 in the November election. That will take effect April 1st of 2021. And right now we're really waiting for regulations from the State Board of Equalization. There's a lot of unknowns with Prop 19, but that will allow you to transfer your primary residence base year value to a replacement anywhere in the state within 2 years of the sale of the original residence. So that's a big change from what it was in the past and what it is right now up until April 1st. So currently, if you're going to a different county, it's governed under Proposition 171, and we'll be waiting to see how it's changed by Prop 19 and the Board of Equalization. But currently, transfer outside of Sonoma County has to be with a participating county. It's limited to principal places of residence. The replacement home must be equal or lesser value and acquired within 3 years. As you do rebuild, if you have any questions, if you have a value disagreement with what we have on the tax roll, come talk to us. We're happy to explain where it's coming from and get any information that you have. You can appeal the value for new construction. So if you're rebuilding, that would be the additions that you're doing within 60 days of the notice that we'll give you. And if you're rebuilding just your burned structure, you have 6 months to appeal the value after we give you the calamity notice. Another reminder, keep your addresses, your mailing addresses updated with our office. And putting on my other hats for a little bit, make sure that you keep your voter registration current. You can register to vote, stay registered to vote at your current residence in case that's what you want to be voting on, maybe the school district or something. Or you can transfer your registration to wherever you're going to be living in the meantime. It's totally up to you as to where you decide that your residence will be. And just, you can always contact our office. We're happy to help. Our phone number is 707-565-1888. And you can email us at assessor@sonoma-county.org. And thank you, Susan, for the opportunity.
And thank you, Deva Marie. I really appreciate it. Could you introduce your deputy, your chief deputy assessor, Rihannon Yeager? And Rihannon, do you have any words tonight?
Hi, I'm Rihannon Yeager. I am the new Chief Deputy Assessor. I'm just here to support Deva, and she did a great job.
But we know that you're really busy in the office and will be with all of the assessment appeals and everything else that you'll be working on.
We are busy. I do want to say that our website has a lot of information that may be useful for fire victims. We have had a lot of opportunity over the last few years to fine-tune our website, and we have tried to make as much information available online to ease access to information. So please check that out. What you're looking for might be easiest found there, and if not, reach out. We're here to help.
And maybe we could post your website address or a link, and maybe Ariel could help post that on the chat tonight or send that out after our panel discussion tonight. And thank you for that. I really appreciate, and we appreciate the opportunity to meet you both because you will be instrumental in the recovery moving forward. So you should all know by now, our great Lois Hopkins, a recovery analyst with the county's Office of Recovery and Resiliency. Lois, thank you so much for being with us once again tonight. And every day it seems another fire survivor sends questions through us to you and probably directly to you. So thank you for what you do and your great information.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. My name is Lois Hopkins, and I am the coordinator for the debris task force for the 2020 fires. And I'm here today to talk about the right of entry form. As Supervisor Gorin mentioned, it's important to get those forms in as the state deploys their contractors for debris removal. They are going to be going to areas that have the highest concentration of right of entry forms submitted. And there is a section in the right of entry form in which the property owner will assign their debris removal insurance proceeds over to the county. So I'm here to answer any questions regarding that. I also currently work on the insurance collection for the 2017 fire survivors. So I'm pretty familiar with the different insurance questions that come up. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. I think the main point that we would like to convey to property owners is that your debris insurance proceeds will be only be what is the maximum that you would pay for any debris removal services that you receive from the state. And should you incur additional expenses for debris removal, for example, tree removal or fence removal that will not be included in the public program, you would be first in line to be reimbursed for those expenses. And then if there's any remaining insurance proceeds, that is what would get turned over to the state. So that's it in a nutshell. And there's a lot of information on the website. It's socoemergency.org / debris removal. If you have any questions, it's up on the screen now. You can send emails to debris removal. And that stands for environmental health. They're managing all of the debris removal. So debris removal at sonoma-county.org. They are accepting in-person appointments or Zoom appointments for the right of entry process. The phone number to schedule an appointment or for any further information is 707-565-6700. I think I'll leave it at that and answer questions after Amy does her insurance presentation, because it may touch on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. And I'm so glad you included the information that a person's insurance debris cleanup could be used for vegetation removal. 3 years ago, that information was not communicated immediately, and people were exceedingly nervous about how they're going to pay for the vegetation removal on their lot, because especially with the glass fire, we have folks with dozens of dead and dying trees that they are responsible or might like to clean up, although they should definitely leave the trees to see if they'll recover. But a lot of those trees will succumb or have succumbed to the fire. So we're glad that you clarified that. Amy, I'm so glad you could be here. Well, no, I'm really sad to see you here tonight. Let's just say that. But you've been so helpful to all of our fire survivors for the last 3 years, not only to Sonoma County fire survivors, but throughout California. And really want to thank you for being here tonight with United Policyholders. So Amy, thank you. Take it away. And there you are.
Susan, I couldn't agree with you more. It's always nice to see you and Tony and Lois and everyone who's on today, but not under these circumstances. So You know, as I tell people, it's never good to lose a home, but if you're gonna, Sonoma County is probably the best place because you've got an incredible brain trust of people like yourself who lost a home and are in government. People like Lois, who now has 3 full years going on 4 under her belt, and the assessor's office. And you know, this is not your first time with coordinating debris removal. So I think, you know, with each fire, we seem to get a little bit better. So thank you for pulling this together, and Ariel for coordinating. So yes, I do think that my organization and the agency that Tony works for, we are a dynamic duo, and it has been, it's just been a really positive trend for a nonprofit organization like ours to work as closely with the Department of Insurance as we do. And it's just I think there's a lot of resources for anyone who's dialed in tonight to navigate the new normal and the unfamiliar landscape of insurance. So I just want to throw a few things out, some points for folks, and then I will try to touch briefly on why I think the right of entry, signing the right of entry and participating in the coordinated program has worked out well for a lot of people. And it's just, I know there are a lot of rumors. There are a lot of rumors. People came down from the Valley Fire, you know, and came down to your community to say, oh, you know, there was one gentleman, oh, they over excavated, and there are rumors. And, you know, when you really get to the facts, the fact is that removing debris in a coordinated way using reputable, qualified vendors with the participation of your local government is the cleanest, safest way to go. And I think Lois will tell you that the county has been very pro-resident in not going after anyone for any money above what their insurance company paid. So it's a sort of a pragmatic, I like to steer people in that direction to participate, because the alternative in a lot of situations can be more expensive, more time consuming, and more problematic for your household. So try not to let all the rumors that you hear get you off track. You know, there's a lot of really good basic information on the county's website and on my organization's website to help you make these decisions. So a few really key pointers. Why is Supervisor Gorin hosting an event just to talk about insurance? Well, it's because insurance funds are your best source of the financing to replace your damaged and destroyed property. Not that government programs aren't helpful, but insurance is the big bucks that you need. And so my organization's main goal, since we were founded after the Oakland Berkeley fire in 1991, has been to help you as an insurance buyer understand the lay of the land, get familiar with some of the lingo, and really be able to navigate the insurance claim process after a total loss, because it is a very unfamiliar process. It's you can get discouraged, you can get overwhelmed. All of that is normal. But at the end of the day, you know, we're here to reassure you, as Tony would, that you paid for insurance for protection. Now you need it. And there are a lot of laws in California and regulations that protect your right to collect every dollar that you're entitled to under your policy. But as you've already figured out, it's not a simple process. It's not nearly as simple as we want it to be. But my organization's Roadmap to Recovery program and the Department of Insurance have a lot of guidance that really is focused on your best interests and is there for you. So number one, start a diary if you haven't already. This is just a diary you might have picked up if you went by our table at the local assistance center. I think Tony's agency gives them away as well, but any notebook will do. A notebook where you every day write down things that happen. Who did you talk to? What was their phone number? Ideally, you have a little envelope to put your receipts in, because it's I think one of the most important tips that people will give you after they've walked the walk that you're on is that staying calm and staying organized and pacing yourself with your decisions is the healthiest way to get from the wreckage back into a home. Everyone feels overwhelmed in your situation. And there's a lot of words that are thrown at you that are very intimidating. And there's just a few of them that I want to go over with you. You may have seen this book. We were giving these away also at the local assistance center. If you're not an internet person, well, you're probably not on this program tonight. But this particular book is good for people who are not fond of spreadsheets and Excel. And if you are working with your insurance company to inventory, this book has lots of good memory joggers to help you. So you heard from Tony. There have been a lot of special rules passed in California to ease your path. What he talked about with insurers giving advances before they would technically owe you money is one of those really good reforms that we have. And Tony's agency gets a lot of credit for negotiating that with insurers. But the reality is your insurance policy, the contract you have with your insurance company is a very important roadmap for you. So Ariel, if you wouldn't mind putting up my slides, that would be great. My organization has already, this is a library we set up for 2020 wildfire survivors. It's free, it's at our website. And there you will find all kinds of self-help, sample letters, and tips from people who've walked in your shoes and links. You will also find our upcoming workshops. We can go to the next slide. Which we have been, we're already on workshop number 5. We actually did one today on contents. Every one of these are the upcoming ones. Every one of our workshops we've been recording, not the Q&As. Those are more informal for you to go on and ask questions. The survivor to survivor workshops are where we have people who have been there, done that. We've got folks from your area, from Coffee Strong, that are participating. We have people from San Diego fires. Again, a very kind of homegrown conversation that you can log into. No officials and no nothing too fancy, just real people talking to people in a confidential space. And then, as I said, we've been having Q&As after we do our workshops, so that if you didn't get to ask a question, you can go on. And this is just about insurance. And then you can register for any of these by going to that link. And then if you can go to the last slide, Ariel. So these are the webinars we've already done for people in your situation. Every one of them is recorded. Every one of them you can watch. If you start to get sleepy, you can always go back and watch it when you have coffee. We have covered how to read and understand your policy, which is one you might want to watch and maybe rewatch. How to do the math to figure out how much extended benefits you may have, how much code upgrade coverage you may have, how much additional living expense coverage, and then each of those buckets of coverage for your home, your stuff, trees and shrubs, temporary rent. How do you make sure that you really have a grasp on that? If you are a partial loss and your home is still standing, we've done 2 workshops already for you. Again, some of these have been translated into Spanish, but all of them are available for you to watch free of charge at your convenience. And we're going to keep those rolling thanks to our amazing team of volunteers, our staff. So just a couple more things before I wrap up. So understanding your policy is always very important, and it's a work in progress for most people. I would wager, Susan, you probably were still learning things about your policy well into your second year. And I just want to remind you that, you know, we live in the real world where insurance is a for-profit business. They're not like you see on TV. So our guidance is very much oriented to help you live in the real world where things are not as they should be. Obviously, you had a total loss. In theory, your insurance company should not require you to list every single thing because everything's gone. So in theory, they should be cutting you a check for all your benefits, but they have not drafted their policies that way. So we bob and weave as best we can. And I want to tell you that I'm not here to say that every single thing is negotiable, but a lot more things are negotiable than your adjuster may say. So for example, your adjuster may not volunteer that instead of finding a temporary rental and living in a temporary rental for 2 years or 3, however long it takes you to replace, that you could actually use that money and buy a tiny house or buy a fifth wheel or even buy a cottage so that you would be able to be on your land while the construction is going or while you decide. But your adjuster is generally not going to offer that. You're going to have to ask and you're going to have to negotiate with them. And the same thing goes with your inventory. You know, you're going to, if you know, the adjuster may say you need to itemize, but if you say, hey, I know the law has been changing, and I know that a lot of insurers are relaxing that itemization requirement and paying advances on contents. Why don't you do that? That's perfectly within your right to ask for that. And my organization offers sample letters to help you word your requests and make them in writing to improve your chances of getting what you want. And on that, I want to say that a lot of your adjusters that have come in, and some of you may be on your second or third already, they come in from out of California and they don't know the rules here. And that's why Tony's agency and my organization have had to be so tenacious and proactive with our outreach, because we will tell you things that your insurance adjuster may not even know. So it is important that you check in from time to time on one of my organization's events or Tony's events or Tony's website. So finally, what are some of the main points I want to leave you with? It's your assets. So you have the biggest stake in making sure that your losses are valued fully. Your home, the cost of replacing the home you lost, and the cost of replacing everything that you lost, and restoring your property to its pre-loss condition. That is your objective. So just because the insurance adjuster may come and give you the impression that they're in charge and they're going to take care of it and they're going to tell you how much you're owed and all that, that's fine. But we suggest that you also do your own math and get second opinions so that on the true value of the assets that you lost, because that's really the only way you can be sure that you are getting a full and fair payout from your insurance company. And in closing, things like actual cash value, replacement cost value, depreciation, those phrases can be a little intimidating, just like the fact that there's 3 different ways that that insurers refer to ALE benefits, the benefits for your expenses due to losing the use of your home. Some of them call it temporary rent, some of them call it loss of use, some of them call it ALE, additional living expense. It all means the same thing. Don't get intimidated by the terminology, okay? It can be broken down, and it really all comes down to this. Insurance is a vehicle to get you back where you were before your loss, but it won't drive itself. We're here to help you. Everyone on this panel is here to help you. We're rooting for you, and we've given you some good guideposts, and this won't be the last time that we will be together. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, Amy. And you might notice that I have a copy of your book. I wish I'd had it 3 years ago. It's full of great information. So go ahead and ask her to send you a copy of this book. It's really helpful. And 3 years plus, I'm still moving forward with rebuilding. And yes, every single week I learn something new about insurance. For example, we could list all of the appliances in the kitchen on our inventory of contents. And even if the dishwasher is built in, list it on your inventory of contents. And then I really want to take great pleasure in introducing, I called Amy and Tony the dynamic duo, but it's actually the three musketeers. Kendall Jarvis from Sonoma County Legal Aid is absolutely your best cheerleader. And I hope you take a minute, Kendall, to talk about what legal aid does. And I love the comment that you made at one of the meetings. Don't take no for an answer. Keep pushing forward. So Kendall Jarvis from Sonoma County Legal Aid, take it away.
Thank you, Supervisor Gorin. So as Supervisor Gorin said, my name is Kendall Jarvis, and I'm a disaster relief attorney for Legal Aid of Sonoma County. We started the disaster relief team literally a couple of days after the 2017 Sonoma complex fires. Since that time, the program has grown dramatically. We have additional attorneys, case managers, and other levels of support. And we do a lot of work in not only one-on-one individual representation, but also outreach and policy. So I literally could talk about insurance for like 12 hours. I'm pretty sure most of us here could, definitely Tony and Amy at minimum. But there's just, the insurance process is one of those things that you're not prepared for until you're there. Very, very few people have ever even filed a claim on their insurance. And those that have, it's something minor, like somebody stole something from my garage, or I had a flood in my kitchen. It's nothing like dealing with a total loss or even severe damage from a wildfire or an urban fire. So the entire process is really just baseline, a learning experience. And one of the that we really discovered early on in this process as a community is that learning experience is a little bit the luck of the draw, where sometimes if you happen to have a good agent, maybe you're adequately insured, and that's wonderful. If you happen to have a good adjuster, maybe you have an easy time getting your money, and that's wonderful. But if you're on the other side of that coin, you end up struggling through the process, and it can get very, very frustrating. And one of the main reasons that it gets frustrating is because we all look to professionals in an industry as people that are supposed to be more knowledgeable than us. As in, I don't go to my doctor's office and say, doctor, I don't agree with you. I know more than you, even though I don't have an MD. Well, that's kind of the way that we view insurance until we're literally in a situation where we need our insurance, but our insurance agent or our insurance adjuster maybe don't necessarily know as much as we thought that they did, should, or really are required to by law. So you find yourself in this position where there's more pressure on you, and not pressure in a bad way, pressure in, I would say, an opportunistic way. Because if you can educate yourself on what the rules and your rights are, and you can take the opportunity to educate your adjuster, you definitely can get what you want. When you look at your insurance policy and you look at that declaration page, that's supposed to mean something. That contract's supposed to say, I purchased this insurance, I paid for this insurance, and I'm entitled to this insurance. So when your adjuster tells you you can't have this, or you got to do A, B, C, and D, one of the things I learned early on from Amy actually was, where does it say that in my policy? Tell me where it tells me that I need to do that. Because we constantly see situations where someone will say, okay, well, you have to go and get 3 estimates. Well, where does it say that in my policy? And I pretty much could guarantee you, I won't 100%, but I'll go to about 99.9, that there's not a contract out there that says that you have to go and get 3 estimates and then give them to your insurance adjuster. So one of the most basic, simplistic things that I try and tell clients is that and I always say my boss might not like this, but you don't have to be an attorney to do this. It can help, absolutely. That's just my law school brain telling me that. But at the end of the day, civil law is really about a contract, a social contract. We all agree that we're going to participate in society and we're going to do so together in a way that's reasonable. It's why if we see, someone walking down the street and they just key someone's car, we would all be offended by it because it's not right. It's unfair. It's unreasonable. We all agree that. We don't need to have a conversation about it. We just inherently know this. So when you're walking through this insurance process, if something feels unfair, if it feels unreasonable, it probably is. And in turn, it's probably not lawful. So trust that gut instinct and use that as a basis to propel yourself forward and take back control. One of the things that Amy brought up was, maybe your adjuster doesn't know everything. That's something that has become a huge issue in 2020, where we see adjusters, the law's changed a lot since 2017, yet the adjuster pool has not changed a lot since 2017. So we constantly see people having these conversations where they're stuck back in the laws as they were prior to all of us arguing and yelling and advocating to make sure that they changed. And they're telling people that they're really not entitled to things that they are legitimately entitled to. And it's not necessarily because they don't know better, it's because they literally haven't educated themselves. So unfortunately, it falls back onto the insured to know what those changes are, to know what their rights are, to know what they're entitled to, and to push that forward and to push that envelope. And I will say, UP's website that I know Ariel put up in the, screen per se, they have a link in there that has a one pager that is about basically what the top rules are / laws that have changed since 2017. I really, really recommend that you read that, because knowing what your rights are in this scenario is literally like 90% of the battle. And the other thing that I'll leave you with, because I truly could talk about this stuff forever, is that they always say in the insurance industry that the insurance industry goes by the 3 Ds. They deny, they delay, and they defend. And essentially what that means is they deny all or a portion of every claim that comes through, because most people will get exhausted and just say, okay, fine. Or they don't know better. They think, well, that's what they told me I'm entitled to, so that must be all I'm entitled to. So 50% of those people go away. For the 50% that are left over, they delay. And they delay because financially and emotionally, it's exhausting. So half of those people then go away as they're delaying in this process. And for the 25% of the people that are left, they either pay or they choose to defend those claims. So if you can get through that rigmarole and you can stick with it to know what you're entitled to and to stand up for your right to recover and your right to the contractual obligations as promised to you, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not always going to feel easy, but that's why I'm here. That's why Amy's here. That's why Tony's here. That's why we're all here, and truly it is a community effort. The other thing I would say is that really something that we really, really learned from 2017 is it's super, super important to talk to your community, to talk to other people who are insured with your insurance provider, to share that information, whether it be from a block captain standpoint or it be from a listserv standpoint, where you're just comparing notes and saying, hey, I have AAA and they did A, B, C, or D. Has anyone else had this experience? I have State Farm and they're telling me I can't do A or B. Has anyone else had this experience? If you can get information to go back to your adjuster and say, hey, you told me that I don't get A or B, but realistically speaking, these 3 other people did, well, then you're going to get A or B. Otherwise, you're going to send a complaint to Tony or what we call a request for assistance, an RFA, and let them know that you're being treated differently than the other people with this same insurance provider, because that's not how the situation is supposed to work. From a public policy standpoint, we expect to be able to believe in our insurance companies and in our insurance system. We don't expect people to be in a situation where they need their insurance and then suddenly figure out that it is not at all what they thought that it was. So keep that in mind, keep that advocacy, keep that education, keep that community perspective, reach out for help. We're, as I said, all here to help. I'm happy to chat whenever. You can email me. Ariel will send anyone who wants it my email. And the last thing I would say that I always say is be kind to yourself. This is a process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. There will be days where it will seem like you can accomplish a lot. And there will be other days where it doesn't make sense to try because you are overwhelmed and you need a break and you deserve one. So be aware of that and give yourself a break if and when you can. And yeah, that's it. We're all here to help at the end of the day.
Thanks, Kendall. Thank you to all of our panelists tonight. And my advice to you is breathe, learn how to use spreadsheets, record everything, keep all of your receipts, talk with all of your friends and neighbors, compare notes, as Kendall said, and don't be in a hurry to settle with your insurance company. Because indeed, you will be in the position of unlocking additional coverage along this journey. And I have not settled with my insurance company yet because we're still rebuilding and exploring additional coverage as we do it. So thank you all for being with us tonight. Now is the time for questions and answers. And Ariel, take it away for us.
Can't see myself on the screen. Oh, there we go. That was very strange. Okay, first we have Pessy. Pessy, you should see a prompt asking you to unmute. Pessy, I'm so sorry. The option is not coming up. I'm gonna move into someone else and see if this is a consistent problem or if it's some glitch with you. I'm gonna go to Erica Blair.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So I have a few questions. Thank you all so much for all of the work that you're doing on our behalf. It makes it so much easier. First, just wanted to ask Tony, you said that there was a list of insurance companies that had agreed to pay contents claims without the itemized list. And I did a quick look on the website for the Department of Insurance, but I didn't see that easily. Is there a way that I could get access to that list?
Yeah, I mean, we issued a press release and it was attached to that press release. And it's also in notices under insurer, under the insurer navigation and under legal, and you go to notices. But we're going to post it on the wildfire resource page.
Awesome.
So it'll probably be there tomorrow on the wildfire resource page. Thank
you. I also was wondering if we're intending to buy another property rather than rebuild, do we still need to go get our own independent assessment of the rebuild cost, or if we're thinking that likely we're over what the policy limit was?
I'm sorry, which over? Sorry, the purchase price is over the policy limit, or
the rebuild cost would likely be over what the policy limit is. Is that, do we still need to get an independent check on what that price would be if we're not planning to rebuild?
I'll start and Amy can add, but that's really up to you. If you're comfortable that the amount that the insurance company is paying you is sufficient, and you don't believe that you're underinsured, then sure, you could accept that money and use that as your basis to go out and then purchase a property in another location. But you first want to make sure that you're doing the full math, as Amy mentioned earlier, of all the additional benefits that you have, so that you're not just getting what's called replacement cost if you have extended replacement cost on top of that, or building code upgrade and landscaping per tree, all those coverages add up. And so you're going to want to make sure that you have available to purchase another home the full amount that you would have had available had you rebuilt on that location.
Right. So it sounded like that you think that you were underinsured. Is that right? That the cost of replacing your original home is is more than the amount of your dwelling insurance. Is that right?
I think it's possible. I just
Okay.
don't know.
So, yeah, so, okay, so, I mean, we do recommend, because the law that allows you to replace by buying instead of rebuilding we're the only state that gives you that right in statute, right? So a lot of the adjusters have never had adjusted a loss before where the policyholder had that right. That's number one source of some confusion. Number two source is that even though we all thought that the right was clean, that you could export all your benefits, like Tony said, that would have been available, extended replacement costs, code upgrades, that you would have been able to collect all those funds and apply it towards a purchase. Some insurance companies didn't agree. And so the legislature had to go back twice and pass laws to clarify. And the last one they did hasn't even taken effect yet. It has to do with whether the insurer can deduct land value under the place that you buy. But the bottom line is you absolutely have that right. And for you, we would always say it is a good idea for lots of reasons to get it doesn't have to be an estimate based on sub bids and an architect's drawings and engineering drawings. It can be less detailed, but some kind of estimate of putting back the house as it was usually is going to help you with two things: determining whether you're underinsured and how underinsured, right? And then you have to figure out, why are you underinsured? Was it your fault, or did the insurance company tell you, no, you do have enough coverage, and do you have some record of that, which is a whole nother inquiry. But the other reason that it's worth doing that, getting somebody to give you that estimate is you do need to know for your taxes whether you have an unreimbursed loss that you could write off some of that on your taxes. So no matter what way you go, it's a good idea to get that replacement cost estimated, even though you don't want to do the project. But if you're kind of close, if the insurer is ready and willing to write you a check for the dwelling, which generally, if they're willing to write you a check this early, you probably are underinsured. But again, these decisions are personal. And I have said over the years, it's not the end of the world if you take a little bit less than you're owed, if it allows you to get on with your life and replace your house and move on. But if you want to know, it's worth getting that estimate of the as was rebuild costs. And there is at least one or two companies in your area that will do it. One of them charges a percentage, one of them charges like $4,000. It depends it's annoying to have to pay for that, but it's hard to get a builder to give you a really accurate estimate on a project that they know they're not going to get hired to do. Does that help?
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I had one last question, which was, my partner was the homeowner and I had my own individual renter's policy. And so we're a little bit confused about how we should be accounting for and filing ALE because we're continuing to live together after the fire.
So in other words, you had a renter's policy that gives you ALE and your partner has a homeowner's policy that gives your partner ALE, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Tony, do you want to take that?
Yeah, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but generally how that would work is they would apportion it similar to what your living arrangement was. So if you were living in a certain portion of the house, let's say, or you're renting a certain portion of the house, let's say on the books, then they could use that as an apportionment for how much you're paying for this new temporary house as to which policy would pay how much. If it's with the same company, it might not matter that much, but if it's with different companies, it could create some tension there that will have to be worked out.
Thank you so much.
And I would encourage every one of our fire survivors to think carefully about whether or not they want to rebuild. The pull of your land is pretty intense and emotional, and you may want to rebuild. Many of the fire survivors from 3 years ago decided not to rebuild because their family circumstances were so unique and different. They wanted to move closer to families. They didn't think they could actually get through the rebuilding process because it was so going to be so time consuming and expensive. And I can attest to the fact that it seems like every day, every week, we are making decisions that take a long time to think through. And so probably I would still move forward with rebuilding, but don't underestimate the time that it will take you to get through the rebuilding process. And that's after you find a builder and agree on a design, not for the faint of heart, I would assure you. So let's move on to the next question, Ariel.
Okay, next we have Lynn Garrett.
Hi, Lynn.
Good evening. First of all, I want to say that every one of your organizations and offices and agencies helped me immensely in 2017, and I wouldn't be rebuilt and back home if it weren't for you. So I was very lucky that I wasn't touched in this fire, but I have lots of friends in the glass fire who are now struggling with this. So in 2017, we did have incredible insurance group listservs that we could talk to people that had travelers or farmers or CSAA. And I want to know, and then I got settled and I didn't follow up with those folks. Are those listservs still intact? Are there ways that we can direct people to them? Or in our community, we're starting to form our little own community listservs, but there was so much expertise. I would love to be able to tap into it if it's still possible.
They
Great
are
question,
definitely, sorry, Supervisor Gorin, they are definitely still intact. I think there's been some question from a community standpoint because none of us were really prepared to have this many disasters this many years in a row, which the question being, do we start new listservs or are we just, continuing the conversation as it moves forward? If you want to email me on the side, I'm happy to connect you with Vita, and Vita basically is our messiah of listservs, for lack of a better word. So I think that would be a great place to start.
And Lynn,
Thank
it's
you,
wonderful
Kendall.
that-
So Vita, I didn't realize that I could contact her. That's great.
Yes, Vita is a dynamo. And she picked up on the model that has been helpful to people now for generations of fire survivors of grouping by insurance company, and Vita, State Farm, but there's several other companies. But Lynn, I would really encourage you to encourage your neighbors to log on to one of our survivor forums, because we are actually setting up some new closed groups. So, but we're still kind of trying to figure out, which ones we need, and whether the people who've been from this 2017s want to stick around and all that. So that's great that you're helping your neighbors.
And that's a good point,
send
Amy.
people to you every week, Amy, so I will do that.
And we also set up basically this group that we call the Wonder Women, for who knows why, but it sounded like a great name, so we stuck with it. But now we're using that group for a number of things, but one of them now is trying to connect a 2017 survivor to a 2020 survivor and or a 2019 survivor. But basically having like a buddy, like when you're a little kid and you get like your older my pal that like shows you around the playground. Like, this is a lot like that in life. It's one of those challenges that you're just not really prepared for, regardless of the fact that we know that it happens. So if you have that kind of need or see that kind of need, please do feel free to send people our way, and we'll do what we can to connect them to prior survivors that can share their experience.
And remember that not all insurance policies are equal, even within the same company of insurance
right.
policies. So you have to be really contacting one of these experts to understand why your policy might be similar or different from someone else with a State Farm or Nationwide or Travelers. Challenging for sure. Next question, Ariel.
Okay, next we have Karen with a Y and no last name. Karen, you should see a prompt.
You know what? I was sitting here and now I've forgotten what I was going to ask you because I know it was important.
They can come back to you, Karen, I'm
Give me in a
sure.
couple minutes. I'm sure I'll get it again.
And write it down.
Yes, yes. I know. I had it and then I couldn't figure out about unmuting and I've been working on that for the last 5 minutes. So
Well, you managed that one. So just remember your question.
Karen, when you remember, not to add to your stress, but when you remember your question, oh, go ahead.
Okay, this was for is it Lisa Hopkins? Where is she? Linda Hopkins, Lois Hopkins.
Lois, yeah.
Hi, Lois.
Linda.
So I'm filling out the ROE form, and am I supposed to bring that in or mail it in? Because, and I was going to put a map of exactly where my well is and my septic is, and include that in it. And part of it I've somehow typed up on the computer, but I can see there are a few things I still have to maybe handwrite in. Is that okay if it's a mix and match like that? And
Yes, yes, and you can submit it electronically. You can take a picture of it and submit it, or you can mail it in. But yes, it's a great idea to designate somewhere on that form a map of infrastructure that you have on your parcel that the contractors need to be aware of when they do their debris work.
okay, and then I'm the person who has the Tree Farm Pottery on Highway 12. Will you let us know if they're going to do the whole property, the buildings, or are they just going to do 1 or 2 or 3 the buildings that were related to the home policy? Are they going to also do, even though it's the whole property is zoned rural agricultural, we did have a business on it.
Right. Karen, your property is actually one that the county is submitting to the state for inclusion for the entire property to be, have the debris removal, the public program. So we
Okay.
should, and I don't know when we're going to be finding out. We're just submitting, we're gathering the different properties, and the request should go up to the state tomorrow or Monday. So
But
we'll
you'll
let you
us
know. Yeah, we'll let you know as soon as we hear.
Okay, and we'll be mailing this in then to you.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
thank you. Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody. It's incredible getting all this information. I really appreciate it. Really, really.
And Karen, every time I pass your property, I think about you. So my best to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next question.
Okay, we have Harriet Buckwalter.
Hi, Harriet.
Sorry, I just accidentally remuted her. 1 second.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I was wondering why it was asking me to unmute again. Hi again. I just had a really quick question about the ROE forms. I know that we certainly have a group of members that are wondering about, they have questions on that, but I want to prompt people to get that in. What is the percentage, can you say, that have handed in versus not handed in of the fire affected properties? Do you have that info?
I believe I believe environmental health currently has about 40 ROEs
Okay.
out of the 450 properties in the LNU and the glass fire.
Holy cow. Okay.
Yeah,
We're missing a lot. Okay. That helps. Thank you.
sure.
But remember that some of those properties are using private contractors and may not be returning in the ROE forms.
Okay, next we have Dylan with no last name.
Yes, unmuted. Hi, yes, Dylan Alter. Hi, thank you everyone for putting on this webinar. It's just so comforting to talk to the people that have more answers than we do going through this. I have maybe a question that might not apply for a lot of folks that went through the fire, but I don't know who else to ask it to. I live up a sort of a dirt road off St. Helena called Tarwater, and we got hit really hard by the fire, completely wiped out the whole property, and because of the way that PG&E did cleanup, it's looking more and more likely that that entire road up to my property and our neighbors' properties is just going to fall off the mountain into the ravine. My question is, if that renders the properties both inaccessible and inhabitable, does that affect the insurance policies? Does that affect the timelines or the transfer stuff? Does it get filed as like act of God? I just don't know.
Right. It definitely affects the insurance if you're not going to be able to legally rebuild, and if you've lost access, if you've lost ingress. But again, just like we were talking earlier with the person who was interested in buying a replacement, you should, I would recommend that you still proceed to get that estimate of what it would cost to put the house back. And then the whole question of what the lost value is, I guess that's sort of a separate issue, right? Because you still want to settle with your insurance company as if you could rebuild. And I, unless part of the road your property.
Yeah, it's a
the road
private.
that's going to fall down into the.
Yep, it's a private
Well,
road.
Since
With
insurance
shared ownership.
doesn't cover, right? Insurance doesn't cover the land. So, Tony, anything? I don't think there's any. The insurance, you couldn't put a claim in anyway for loss of the road. I don't think.
Yeah, but you might be able.
Unless there was
you
a,
might be able
unless
to
there was
use
like a
alternative.
retaining wall or something. Sorry, go ahead.
But could you like extend the like the 36 months of loss of use, that sort of things?
Possibly, but it's not necessarily a given. We had some insurance companies agree to do that voluntarily, and maybe insurance companies will do that again, but it's not something that you can mandate. One thing I always say, if there's not a law that requires it, it basically means your insurance company doesn't have to do it. And at the end of the day, they often won't, which is why we see those problems. In a scenario like this, one of the unusual situations that we have in a lot of places that are impacted by fires in California, that is not necessarily true of fires all over the place, is that for how close we are to San Francisco, we're really relatively rural. So we end up with these situations where you have loss of traditional home ownership in the traditional built sense, where I'm in the city limits, right? And then you have this other situation where I have lost my home and it's technically a traditional home, but I have a septic, I have a well, I have a pump, I have a pump house, I have, 500 trees, right? I'm just making stuff up now, but you get my point. When
Totally,
there
you're quite
are
accurate.
policies, when there are policies that are written as if they are for traditional home ownership, but really should be written for a rural property that has all of these other considerations, that, in my opinion, is absolutely something that needs to be taken up with your insurance company. A lot of attorneys told me that I was crazy to fight this battle, but I will say that I think there's a very good basis for trying to hold your insurance company responsible for providing a traditional homeowner's policy in a scenario where if you ever suffered a total loss, you wouldn't have the funding available to do the things that you needed to do. You wouldn't have the coverage to repair the road. You wouldn't have the coverage to repair the septic or repair the well. And this becomes more problematic the more shared that stuff is. So if you have a shared road, a shared bridge, a shared well, a blah, 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 right? Because then you're just dealing with more and more insurance companies arguing about who should or shouldn't pay. So I would say, one, ask your insurance company, you know, what are they going to do for you to address this issue? And if they say nothing, then definitely give me a call for starters. But secondarily, I would file a request for assistance. I would say, I've had this policy. We purchased this policy. My insurance company absolutely knew that we lived in a very rural area. They're absolutely aware of the fact that we had a well, a pump, a septic system, a shared road, et cetera, et cetera. Now my property is like falling down and they're telling me I just straight up don't have coverage for it. You know, that's to me, that's unfair. And I can say there are no guarantees when you fight this battle, but it's worth it, especially if you're in a multi-generational situation, which is very, very common the more rural we get in Sonoma County, where the land, as Supervisor Gorin said, the land means almost more than the house in certain situations because it's been in the family for so long, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have T. Daly. Or Dally.
It's Daily, thank you. Thanks everybody for the forum. Again, awesome to have all of these experts at our table. Amy or Kendall or Tony, regarding ALE benefits, we have had a partial loss and we're not able to access our house. I was told by State Farm adjusters that I have to have a written rental agreement, including a business name or a social security number for an individual, so that they will be able to provide any kind of reimbursement that we would then pay to the landlord. I just wanted to know if that is true or if that's kind of just an insurance posturing situation. Thank you.
Well, so I'm sorry, your name is starts with a T, right?
Sorry, my name is Tracy. I'm not sure.
Tracy. Okay, Tracy. So you know, they do need proof. I mean, generally, if they're not advancing ALE under the voluntary claim reform, if they're not giving you that 4 months, or I mean, since I don't know how severe the damage is and how long you're looking that you're going to be out, they generally do expect to see some proof that you are spending money on temporary lodging. And I think in a lot of situations, people will stay with a friend or they'll stay with a relative, and then they want to, you know, reimburse the relative or give some money to the friend. But typically the insurance company will not issue payment unless they have proof that of an expenditure for your temporary rent. So it is, you know, it doesn't have to be a social security number or whatever, you know, they were saying, but some kind of proof that you are either going to incur rent or already have incurred is generally going to be required if they're not giving you a lump sum advance.
Okay. Thank
and
you.
to follow up on that, Tracy, really quickly, I will say that insurance companies, they treat loss of use and ALE differently. So one of the things that State Farm does is allows for sort of two interpretations of what loss of use can be used for. And one of those interpretations is you're putting me up in a rental unit. That rental unit costs X number of dollars a month. The other one is, well, if I still had my home, right, because loss of use is supposed to compensate you for the financial inconvenience associated with your loss. So if I still had my home, I could rent it out to whoever I wanted and go and live with Kendall for a couple months, right? Save some money. So in that scenario, they agree to pay individuals basically the fair market value of what their home would have been rentable for on the open market. If you can negotiate what your home would be for, or you know what I mean, would be rentable for on the open market, that is an easier way to control your money. And one of the things that we learn with loss of use is that it is something that is always about hindsight, because if you can get ahead of the loss of use piece and see where the best financial, means are for you to try and utilize that portion of your coverage, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So if there is a way, if your adjuster is open to, giving you the fair market value, it's fair for you to say, hey, look, for example, nowhere in your contract is it going to say that you have to give a social security number or anything like that, which doesn't mean they can't still request it, as proof,
Right.
but you can sort of put it back in their plate and say, we would really like to have the opportunity to sort of control this, especially because one of the things that happens is, when you've been a homeowner and you suffer a total loss, oftentimes, especially because of the cost of living in California, you have not been a renter for many, many years. Yes, we see people that lost their home shortly after purchasing, but that's few and far between. Most of the time you've lived in this home for a long time and or lived in another home, but you've been a homeowner and suddenly you're a renter. And now you're asked to just trust that your insurance company is going to send you this, payment every month and hope that your rental stability is wonderful, right? Which is, it's panic inducing. You're definitely not alone there. Everyone feels that, like, wait, I don't trust this, So if you can negotiate and again, go back to what I was saying about, what seems reasonable here, because it is reasonable. It's your money. You should have a right to control it. It doesn't mean they 100% have to agree with you, but it is a good lesson in terms of advocating for yourself and seeing what you can get out of them, because it's absolutely something that can be negotiated.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Kendall. Is it kind of awkward? I feel a little awkward if I've already initiated the conversation about rental reimbursement, and then I switch gears and go to, hey, how about fair market rental value?
Not at all. I always love to tell people that after they talk to me or Amy or Tony, that they don't mention us at all, and that they just say, I've been doing my research,
Okay.
because then it makes your adjuster think that you're going to go out there, you're going to find the answers, and that you're a force to be reckoned with. And it is, difficult as that is, that's that's the standard you want to set. You want them to think, oh, okay, this person, they're not worth fighting with. I'm not going to push too hard here because I know that they're going to go and, find the other side to whatever argument I'm putting down. So you could change the tune, just look at it from an empowered way.
Yes,
Okay,
Tony,
thank you so much.
One thing I can add to that is that for the rest of the group that are listening is that some policies actually give you the option as the policyholder of doing expenses incurred and turning those receipts in and leases in and everything else in and getting reimbursed, or as Kendall mentioned, fair rental value. So everyone should check their policy to see if they have that option, and that will automatically give you that flexibility rather than having to negotiate it outside of your policy language.
All good advice, and we took the modest way out. We chose a rather modest rental, not comparable to what we lost, and we were very thrifty compared to some of the other very expensive rentals that others lived in for quite a long time. And I tried to argue for extended coverage after my expiration of ALE, saying, well, we were so modest, so thrifty. Oh, that didn't get me anywhere. So check your policy. Some policies cap the total amount of expenses for ALE. Some cap the length of time, and some, as you've heard from Kendall and Tony, negotiate a little harder.
Okay, next we have John Knight. John, you should see a prompt.
Okay. First, thank you to Susan and certainly to all of the presenters. The property I'm talking about is actually near the pottery and Christmas tree business. All 8 buildings burned, from the large barn to the very small pump house. There's the ranch house. As far as dwellings are concerned, there's the ranch house and 3 cottages. We rent 2 of the cottages, keep one for ourselves, and rent the ranch house. Now, this is an assessment question. The ranch house was a 1,900 square foot structure. We intend to replace it with a small house in the 900 square foot range. I'm wondering if that gives us some kind of credit so that we could maybe build, this is beyond the 120% figure, so we could maybe build one or more cottages that are a little bigger than they were, which is the 750 square foot range.
Just so to clarify, you're talking about rebuilding the cottages you had, and then the main house rebuilding to less square footage to possibly add an additional cottage.
And for example, if say we wanted to replace a 750 or so square foot cottage with one in the 900, maybe even slightly over 1,000 square feet range, would we get some kind of credit from the 1,000 or so square feet that we're not using in replacing the ranch house?
So a month ago, I would have said no.
Simple.
And now I'm going to say I don't know. So there was no provision that allowed us to prorate for building less. So you were either restored or you weren't. But this new legislation that Deva mentioned that allows you to build up to 120% may be what allows you to do what you're speaking of. And we're waiting on guidance from the state. So I don't want to answer your question because I'm not 100% sure. I know it's probably really early for you to know for sure what you're going to do. So please keep calling back to our office, and as we get updated, we'll be more than happy to share, but there might be a little bit more leniency with what you're speaking of.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Amy Robinson.
Hi, Amy.
Hi there. Thank you, everyone, for doing these webinars. I was on the United Policyholder one earlier, so I'm like totally binging out on insurance.
Oh, you sure are.
You
can teach the next one.
So my question is about being underinsured. So we have realized in retrospect that we were pretty drastically underinsured on our contents and on loss of use. And I know that I've heard on the contents coverage that there's tax remedies for, you know, what you lost above your coverage limit. And I'm wondering, I haven't heard anything about that in terms of loss of use. Like we had a pretty low cap on, and we got it all because it was so little. Like the benefit of being underinsured is that the insurance companies like were not really worth their time. So we haven't had trouble, but I'm wondering if there are any remedies for being underinsured on that piece, either through taxes or I don't know, other directions or resources that we could use.
So what insurer are you with?
CSAA.
Okay, so the problem with underinsurance remedies is that every time people get together, they hire a lawyer, they file a lawsuit for being underinsured, and then it either settles confidentially and then we never know what happened, or it goes away, and then some people succeed in getting their underinsurance remedied by negotiation. And as with all things, the smaller the dollar amount, the easier it is to negotiate a settlement with your insurance company. I happen to know that an underinsurance class action suit that was brought by 2017 Atlas Tub survivors against CSAA just settled confidentially. So, but that sort of doesn't help you because we don't know the details, but if it's settled, that means that the company must have made some decision that they might be compelled by a court to pay. So I would say don't give up for sure. That you want to quantify the extent to which you are underinsured. That's the same thing that I would say about quantifying the extent to which your dwelling is underinsured.
Mm-hmm.
Quantify the extent to which your temporary living expense is underinsured. Little trickier because it's harder to project how long it would have taken you or how long it will take you. That said, there certainly are, the IRS has casualty loss tax rules. We will be doing a clinic in January, but you probably don't want to wait that long, where we're going to have volunteer CPAs and financial planners. But I would say for the ALE, again, quantify, make the request in writing, just like Kendall was saying. You want to be that squeaky wheel. You want to be the force to be reckoned with, but you also want to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, so that you have, like I said, you've quantified. Well, with a reasonable home replacement is usually somewhere around 2 years, and so doing that math to come up with some figure and making a concrete request in writing to your insurer saying, had we been insured properly, we would have had this much, and this is what our loss is your first step, is to make that request in writing with some backup.
Okay.
And I'm sure Kendall had something to add.
Yeah, I would add, as I always do, right? I would add that in the beginning of this endeavor, many attorneys told me that the underinsurance piece was kind of a non-starter. And the reason for that is predominantly because the plaintiff side of insurance law is not really situated to just get back a couple $100,000. And I know that sounds like a good value of money, but the cost of litigation is such, and the reality that the insurance industry is a titan and can bury you in procedure and paperwork and force you to expend significant amounts of money, means that those cases when they're kind of a toss-up, there's not a law against underinsuring people. Your insurance company doesn't owe you a fiduciary duty, so they have no obligation to make sure you're adequately insured. So we sort of sit in this catch-22. But with that said, I ignored that advice because 85% of people are underinsured to some extent, and many of them severely. And that's just wrong. And that there's a whole history lesson that Amy and I could talk about forever, spreading from the Oakland Hills fires back in the early 90s. But beyond that, the reality that we're in now is that it makes sense to try and have them address this issue. And I will say that while I can't disclose the confidentiality of the settlements themselves, I've had many insurance companies agree to remediate the underinsurance issue. And one way that I call the short way to the end, because I don't think that really anyone, unless they absolutely have to for financial reasons, if you suffered a total loss, going through litigation is generally just not a good idea. It's super emotional. They call it a trial for a reason, right? So if we take that out of it for a minute, the short way to the end for me is to file a request for assistance with a DOI, and the Department of Insurance, and you can do that on their website. And the reason why I call that the short way to the end is because you can go back and forth with your insurance company about it. You can see if they'll address the issue. Oftentimes the adjuster doesn't know what to do with that. So maybe they send it to the supervisor. The supervisor then doesn't know what to do with it because each sort of individual level of insurance companies are separated significantly. So you end up having a hard time making progress on that note. So when you go through the request for assistance process with the Department of Insurance, what that forces the insurance company to do is basically tell the Department of Insurance why they are standing by what they did, right? Why they don't think they did anything wrong in underinsuring you. This is why we're going to validate ourselves, or they have to resolve the issue. And when they go back and forth with the Department of Insurance, at some point in time, it gets harder for the insurance company to continue to defend why it makes sense that you're significantly underinsured in these two areas, right? Especially given what we have known from 2017, and especially given certain regulations that have changed in the past, 10 years related to not underinsuring people. So if the DOI process works, basically what either you get a resolution, right? Or B, it forces the issue into mediation. And while there's no technical forcing into mediation, most insurance companies don't say no, because you don't want to be that insurance company that says no to the Department of Insurance when the Department of Insurance goes to audit who is the good guy and who is the bad guy, right? So if you can force them into a room to sit down at a table and have sort of a mini litigation that says, hey, this is why I don't think it was my fault that I was underinsured. And in fact, insurance company, I think it was your fault. And as Amy said, here are the actual damages. So here's proof that I am, as a matter of fact, underinsured, and these are the costs associated with that. Oftentimes something will be offered. It's not necessarily going to be, every single penny on the dollar that you should have received, but it's a way of getting them to cough up something to make the situation better.
And if I could add to that, certainly contact us, file a request for assistance with us. We'd be happy to take a look at it. And from the way you couch the question, it sounds like you may not be underinsured for your structure. And since your policy, your coverage for your other structures, your contents, and your additional living expenses flows as a percentage off of that structure, it'll be important to see how they valued your structure, your initial dwelling structure to begin with, to see if there was any mistakes made. Was it the wrong square footage? Were there other issues there that could bring that dwelling coverage up, which will then bring the other percentages up in the other coverages? And that's something that we would look at initially and see what's going on. And then, as Kendall said, if we're not able to resolve the issue, we could request mediation and see if there's a way to get that resolved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I am going to try Pessy one more time. Pessy, I'm not seeing the button, but if you want to try to unmute, please do. Okay, please email me. I think when we're done with Q&A, I'm going to put up my email again. So please email me and we'll try to get your question answered. And then we have Karen again.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So I heard that you could maybe use some of your ALE money and put a structure on your property instead of renting another, like we're renting right now in Oakmont, but maybe for 1 year, but maybe next year we could put something on the property and use more of our ALE money to put something, a small modular little house or something, that then we would have it for later instead of just throwing it out as rent. Is that possible? Are there conditions on that type of thing?
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony. Go for it.
It's a tough negotiation with an insurance company. The adjusters are not used to it. They started to become more used to it a few years ago after the 2017 fires. It became more common for that someone to ask about that. The easier ask is for negotiating with them to say, I'm going to get $80,000, for example, for additional living expenses. I would like to use that $80,000 to purchase a RV or a fifth wheel or something to live in there temporarily. And would they be willing to do that? And some companies are willing to do that. Some companies aren't. It just depends on the company. We were trying to get stricter laws in place over the last couple of years that would have actually expressly required that of an insurance company. We weren't able to get that expressly stated. But having said that, many insurance companies will at least take a look at that. And some companies have said yes. If you're going to build a smaller structure, it's a little bit more difficult of an ask because you're actually building something there. But it's technically the same loss to the insurance company, so it should be the same answer, but it does create a little bit of a different issue that you're building more than, you're going to end up building more than what you would have been building otherwise.
And what if you're just having like a module, a mobile unit put on there instead of it being a fifth wheel, but like, you know, some type of, you know, they have these small little buildings you can rent.
Right.
You can buy.
The tiny houses are modular. That's what I was referring to earlier. You know, they're prefab.
Yeah.
But you know, Tony's hit on something that's good to remember, which is anytime your adjuster or your insurer thinks that you're trying to better yourself, they're going to put the brakes on that. But to remind, you know, you, Karen, when you're negotiating, and you should absolutely try, you negotiate from a position of information and strength, meaning that you do the math of what let's say over a 36-month period, which would be the maximum you'd be entitled to, 24 for sure, 36 if you can establish there's reasons why you need the extra 12. How much rent would they be on the hook for, right? For a comparable place to what you lost. So if you do that math, and then you can show them that they would actually save money if they agreed to give you a lump sum payment that was maybe a little bit less than what they would if they had to pay your rent for 36 months, let's say, show that it would be X, and then show them that purchasing the tiny home or the modular unit would be less than X. That will increase your chances of getting them to agree if you can show that they're going to save money that way. They'll come back and say, well, we can't, you don't know if it's going to take you 3 years or not. So you might have a better shot at the equivalent of 2 years worth of temporary rent. But again, it's a negotiation. It's something that you have to, it's not an absolute right. We don't want to be here to raise your expectations unreasonably, but we're suggesting that if you make your case and you make it based on some objective information, like what we were talking earlier about fair rental value, you get a realtor. You don't just say, well, this is what I think I could rent it for. You get a piece of paper from a professional realtor to say, this is the market value, or this is the temporary rent equivalent that they'd have to pay for the place, something that lodging that's equivalent to the place they were living in before the fire. You are armed with that data, and then you are a little bit in a better, stronger position to negotiate. But don't you know, like they must do this. You know, you are asking them for reasonableness. You are asking them to be reasonable, which is the essence of their duty of good faith.
Right.
Well,
The thing,
Karen, can I add
one
Karen,
thing is
can I
that,
add really quickly?
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interject. One of the things that we saw since 2017 was that there's really a lack of uniformity about loss of use and additional living expense coverage. We saw people that were put in, you know, $20,000 a month homes because they were paying vacation rental value, you know, on the daily basis for the full month. While other people were like sent to live, you know, 80 miles away in some rental that they were like, this is nothing like the house I lost. And one of the things that we learned was that the best place that you could be in as an insured is to make the most out of the negotiation process as you possibly can, especially in relationship to that piece of the puzzle. Because quite honestly, insurance companies will say, you know, you can't profit from your loss. You can't profit from your loss. As if anyone would choose to go through this for like a fifth wheel or something, right? But at the end of the day, we definitely had people that they use their personal property money as a down payment for a temporary home, and loss of use paid that mortgage for those 2 years while they were rebuilding. So there are ways to make your money work for yourself. You just have to be as, you know, as Amy said, you always want to appear reasonable because you know, that's part of your burden as well as their burden, right? But, you know, you want to look at this in a way to say, you know, what's most financially advantageous. And if it is to put a tiny home on your property, or if it's, you know, to purchase a home temporarily, you know, then advocate for those things. And if you can find others who are insured with the same insurer, and if they've received that, then you have even a bigger leg up to say, well, wait a minute, I know for a fact that these other people have. And that gives you more wiggle room when you're, pushing this issue forward.
Well,
I really want to thank Karen. I think Kendall and Amy are always available to answer your specific questions, but we do have to conclude our panel conversation tonight. And thank you to all of our panelists. Great information. Someone just sent me an email saying, great information. Thank your panelists. And indeed, I do. Tony Cignarale from the Insurance Commissioner's Office, Amy Bach from United Policyholders, Deva Marie Proto and Rihannon Yeager, and of course, Lois Hopkins from the county, and Kendall Jarvis. Always a pleasure. Great information. And again, this forum, this panel will be archived in a couple of days on my Facebook post and Facebook page. And as always, thank you, Ariel Kubu-Jones, for all of your help in organizing our great panel discussion tonight. And if you have unanswered questions, please contact us and we'll be glad to get you the information. So there is Ariel Kubu-Jones' address at sonoma-county.org. So please reach out to her. Please take care of yourself. I'm so glad that Ariel put on there December 17th, the mental health, take care of you. It is a very, very stressful time with COVID, but you are undergoing the double or triple whammies of losing a home. And I know that is very traumatic to try to go through the holiday season, knowing that all of your family traditions have been lost, but you're going to be able to rekindle great traditions because you're going to do it authentically from the heart and with great passion in very different ways, especially during the COVID pandemic, when we're asking you to limit your holiday gatherings. Be well, be safe, and thank you so much for all of the folks who've taken your time tonight to provide great information. Thank you and have a good night.